Hello, and welcome back to Flip Dish Takeaways, where we bring you insights, tips, and great takeaways from the restaurant and hospitality industry from around the world. I'm your host, Yvonne Morgan. The coronavirus pandemic has forced massive change within the food industry, with many restaurateurs and business owners being forced to adapt to unstable landscapes, often in new and creative ways. In this episode, I chat to Tori Rouse about the Rocket Oven, a business born out of her response to the pandemic. For many years, Tori ran a successful catering company alongside her husband, George. But when COVID put the business on hold, they were forced to rethink things. They got the idea to set up their own mobile food truck, and after using their suppliers to sell produce out of their catering van to people who could not make it to the shops during lockdown, this idea turned into the Rocket Oven. Tori and George purchased an airstream-style trailer, modeled on the 1950s camper van style, which gives the business its name, and now the Rocket Oven operates outside of a local pub in Chesham every Friday and Saturday, serving homemade flatbreads and desserts. We chat about adapting to a new business model, the pros and cons of working and cooking in a food truck, the food they serve, and the importance they place on purchasing their produce locally. And finally, we discuss their plans for the future of the business, including the new rocket route. Tori, thank you and welcome to the Flip Dish Takeaways podcast. Wanted to thank you for joining us today. Really excited to hear a little bit more about your restaurant, The Rocket Oven, and both yourself and your husband and your family's experience. Can we start off by you telling me a bit about actually your husband, George, who runs The Rocket Oven with you?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So his background, he left school at 16 and trained as a chef at Westminster Kingsway in London, and then worked in a variety of restaurants, getting lots of experience before he kind of then went into a small startup company not related to catering, and then kind of came back from that and just sort of wanted to go back into the catering world, and that was sort of when we met. And we kind of came up with the idea of starting our own catering business. I've not got a background in catering. I'm a teacher and management consultant in terms of my experience. But we kind of thought, why not start something together? We've both got a bit of experience in business, and obviously George is a chef. And so we started that about 10 years ago. It's called George's Kitchen, I guess in theory it was running incredibly successfully until the pandemic last March hit, had a variety of clients, corporate, lots of milestone events, corporate clients that were kind of weekly, so we had a good kind of steady income. We hired a head chef and then had a bank of waiting staff. So that's kind of in a nutshell my husband and kind of how we came together in terms of working together and what his experience is.
Excellent. And for those who don't know, can you describe the Rocket Oven to our listeners and the sort of food that you provide to customers?
Yeah, of course. So the Rocket Oven is a mobile food trailer. It's to be precise, it's an airstream style trailer. So it's modelled off the 1950s, I guess, American kind of camper van style, which looks like a rocket, hence the name. We specialise. We wanted to be known for something, so we specialise in making homemade flatbreads with a variety of fillings, and then a few sides and a dessert. Our menu is quite small. We wanted to keep it all fresh, local, good quality food, and therefore have quite a small menu. And we're open every Friday and Saturday at a local pub where I live in Chesham, as well as being kind of available for private hire for weddings, festivals, pop-ups, that sort of thing.
So once COVID happened, how did your business evolve or change?
It was quite dramatically changed, I guess, in that maybe unlike quite a lot of other industries, ours just stopped overnight. There wasn't a sense of it trickling down to kind of, sort of slowly losing business. We literally lost everything overnight in terms of, events that were booked in, the corporate client that we had booked in for that week alone, everything was cancelled. And we certainly did spend the kind of first week of lockdown in a bit of a kind of state of, I guess, panic, like a lot of people, especially in that industry. And then we ended up doing a very short interim business of delivering food boxes locally back when the supermarkets were kind of overwhelmed with a lot of people trying to, even like things like pasta and toilet roll. Those were the things people were obsessed with. So we tapped into the fact that we had a series of suppliers who were able to deliver next day, and then we could deliver as a result to people locally without them having to go to shops, especially if they were vulnerable. And we literally posted about being able to do that on a Facebook group, having done it ourselves and getting food for ourselves in and our family. We thought, why not kind of go a bit broader and see if anyone else locally wants it. And quite quickly we had a good regular client base. George used his catering van to deliver it. I did all the logistics and admin. We had a newborn, so we had a 3-month as well. So that was another interesting thing to the mix. And that was just a short-term thing. We knew that wasn't forever. We weren't about to be the next Ocado. But we kind of got 4 months down the line and thought, this isn't forever. So that's when we got the idea to get the airstream trailer and see it as a short-term solution to having a business during COVID. And secondly, have it as an add-on when hopefully George's Kitchen, which it is, slowly comes back. It's a perfect kind of addition to weddings and other milestone occasions.
That's really interesting. And if I can go back to the food boxes for a second, I know this wasn't your long-term plan. How did you decide like what types of food boxes to offer?
I think we just wanted to keep it sort of basic in that, keep it to sort of veg and fruit, dairy, dry stores and meat. So we did like a butcher's box, which we wanted to use because George's suppliers were so good. We just, the quality was so good. A lot of the meat we got wasn't meat that you could get necessarily at a Sainsbury's or a Waitrose. It was, it's an amazing company called HG Walter. Actually, they're in London, but that I think was quite a USP for us. It wasn't that we were just providing a sort of a gap for what the supermarket provide. We actually were offering produce that was, unique. Similarly with the dairy, we wanted to use local if we could. So someone called Tim's Dairy, which I'm sure is a familiar household name. We wanted to use someone that we could locally, and that was another option. So we went down the basic route, but hopefully offering a little bit of difference in terms of some of the items that you would be able to get in the supermarket.
Okay. And the rocket oven, now I'd like to talk a little bit more about the visual aesthetic of the mobile trailer. So for those of our listeners who haven't seen this, can you describe a little bit about what it looks like on the outside and why you went with this style?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of from like a style perspective, we initially were quite keen to go down the old school route of getting something like a VW or a Citroen kind of old school truck van type thing. But having done a lot of research, I think we were quite concerned by the reliability of these types of vehicles, whether we had to import them from another country and then all of the parts were from another country. We'd have to rely on that supply chain, which could be quite slow from what we learnt. So whilst we loved the aesthetic of old, we didn't want the upkeep and the lack of reliability that would provide. So we thought we'd find a halfway house, and with the airstream style trailer, it was modelled to look kind of 50, 60, 70 years old, but it's bespoke to your requirements, and it's we're pulling it rather than relying on its engine or anything. So we can get a really good, which we've got a towing car, but then we've got the kind of the reliability of the vehicle itself being it's all self-contained and
No, I love it. It's got such a unique and identifiable look to it. You guys have done a great job with the design.
It's a big shiny mirror, I guess. That's people whenever they're coming up, some people look at themselves in it because it's just a massive shiny box, really, and it kind of stands out from quite a distance, which is what we wanted. We wanted it to be obviously to offer amazing food, but also for it to be an attraction at a festival or a wedding. Something for it to be kind of a photo opportunity kind of thing. We loved the look and loved the company that made it for us. So it was perfect, and loved the fact that we could literally kit it out to our exact, George's, because he's the chef, obviously his exact requirements. So it's not just, we can hire it out as a kitchen for other events that George's Kitchen does. So he can, it can be a one big package. We can do the wedding breakfast in there, and then we can do the informal kind of catering for the evening from the trailer itself. So it's got a lot of offerings, I guess.
Oh, nice. And opportunity for scalability and events, like you said. Yeah. And I know George is a chef as well.
Mhm.
Can we dive a little bit into the food that you're offering? So what's on the menu? What's working? Have you made any changes? Can you tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about
absolutely.
that?
So we wanted something that was versatile and I guess relatively easy. So a flatbread is not only cost effective, but it's also incredibly versatile. So it can carry any genre of food. So that was the initial thinking, I guess, similar to a pizza base in that it's sort of, you know, it's not a huge taste. A flatbread, it's a carrier for flavour. So we wanted that. Well, George wanted that, and then the actual toppings, if you will, or the fillers. We've got like a signature menu that we have every Friday and Saturday at the pub with just four different types of foods. We've got like a lazy lamb. We call it the lazy lamb. It's just a shoulder of lamb cooked. It's called like a gyros style. It's just a Cypriot inspired with like skin on fries and homemade garlic mayonnaise. We've got homemade falafel with like pomegranate relish and tzatziki. We've got a battered halloumi one with jalapeno slaw, and then as a meat option to that, we've got a buttermilk chicken with jalapeno slaw and crispy onions and jalapeno, what's it called, habanero mayo. So we've kept it, like I said, kind of quite a simple menu, with the idea that we can put lots of time and effort into sourcing the ingredients and making sure that the quality of everything is brilliant. Everything is homemade. I think that's really key for us, or for George in particular. We wanted it to all be kind of, it's fast food, but fresh and good quality and tasty, and healthy to an extent. So that was our aim. And then we've got a couple of sides. We've got rocket fries, which are cheese fondue skin on fries with a jalapeno relish, and homemade jalapeno slaw. And then an inspired dish from my brother and sister-in-law who live in Amsterdam. Whenever we went there, or whenever we go there, the kind of really reputable bar snack is called bitterballen. And it's essentially like a croquette, but it's filled with like a bechamel sauce and then minced beef, and then deep fat fried. And we have a little dipping sauce of mustard with it. And it's just heavenly. So we wanted to bring a bit of our family inspiration into it as well. So it's an eclectic mix of things, but they've all got kind of a bit of a story or there's a reason for them. So
Oh,
yeah.
excellent. It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into each and every item that you have on the menu.
Yeah.
Is there anything that didn't work or that you tried and took off the menu?
I don't want to sound like we've nailed everything, because we haven't, but anything that didn't work. The flatbreads we try and do even just a little bit in advance now. We were used to do them absolutely to order. And the timeline, even just for that, even though it sounds, you've got the dough ready, all you have to do is roll it and put it, and cook it. Just that timeline was a good, call it 2-3 minutes extra to your overall wait time. And quite quickly we just found people were waiting for what felt like forever, but it was probably more like 7 or 8 minutes. And for me, that just wasn't good enough. The timeline on that, I wanted to get it halved. We're probably more at a 4 or 5 minute mark now. So George will make them 2 hours before. So they're super fresh still. But then he just literally can heat them up on the griddle, and then they're ready to go with the fillings. So it's just the timeline on that has just massively helped. We didn't get any complaints, but I didn't like the idea of people lingering and waiting when it is meant to be, essentially fast food. I don't think the timeline should be over 4 or 5 minutes. So that was a learning quite quickly. I think it's something that, George has never worked in that environment. He's always been in kind of fine dining. So it's a very different environment for him, but I think you've got to learn. You kind of fail quickly, but make mistakes and learn from them quickly as well. So that's definitely something that stuck out as a big change, and is massively helped.
I see. Well, thanks for sharing that. You also seem, even as you're describing some of the dishes, you seem as though you put a healthy emphasis, or an emphasis on healthy eating. It's kind of embedded in the menu as well. Why is this important to you and the restaurant, to provide healthy or nutritious fast food, or serving that quickly to your customers as well?
Both George and I were brought up in very foodie families where everything pretty much was made from scratch. So I think it's part of our kind of how we like to live at home in terms of the food we cook and eat. So it would feel remiss to do something otherwise, to not centre a menu or ingredients around what we love doing, which is making things from scratch. So that's certainly a big driver. And we are a family-run business. It's just George and I. running it. And we've got our little daughter who's, I forgot to mention this, but for the menu, another thing, we kind of did a bit of market research before we set up, and using our local kind of clients that use us for our delivery, and asked them what they'd want to see on a menu. And they said it's so annoying that often takeaways, there's no food for children on a Friday if we want all our family to eat. So we also included what we called like a pocket rocket menu, so playing off the fact we're called the rocket oven. And again, we wanted that to be really healthy. So it's basically posh chicken nuggets with shredded carrot, lettuce and mayonnaise. It's very simple, but we know the importance of feeding, making sure our child eats healthily as well. So it's all centered around the fact that we're driven by our family and our inspiration and how we were brought up, really. And how
I love that. That's an interesting insight. Having kids myself, I'd say, that they have kids or food for children, but seeing it on a takeaway menu, you're right, is quite uncommon in some cases. And I did notice that you had some kids options on the menu as well. So that's great. You mentioned some of your locally sourced food. Was wondering if we can dive into that a little bit more about where you get the food from. I know you mentioned potentially it was some of your previous vendors or providers, and why it's important to support local farms and the local food producers.
I think with COVID, there has been a lot of emphasis on supporting local. Certainly, I think that's come out. That's a really positive silver lining. And we found definitely when we were delivering to the community that there is a huge local emphasis here and people supporting local. And we just loved that. And we wanted to almost, not that we wouldn't without that, but I think we really wanted to show that we love the community we were in. So we use local butchers who are literally probably about a couple of 100 metres down the road from us. They have a farm just outside where we live. Not all of the meat comes from that farm. It's not possible. But as an example, the lamb, quite often for the right time of year, they'll source it from their farm. So the veg and fruit company we use is from a local market. So literally George goes to the market every Wednesday or Thursday and he goes and picks up what he needs for the week. We've got a print and press company that we use for all of our printing, and they're in town. Apple juice we've got on our menu, which is from, again, down the road, a farm that have their own huge orchards with apple trees, and we get all our apple juice from them, and we have our own little printed label. They do branded printed labels for us. So it's, not everything. I'd be lying if I said everything is local and everything is seasonal. Unfortunately, it's just not possible. But where we can, we really do want to have that local element. Even so much as our neighbours have an allotment, and we are getting our cucumbers from them right now, from our tzatziki. We got all our salad from them for the kids' menu. My dad has loads of tomatoes, so we're using that on the menu. So it's a real eclectic mix again, but I think, again, growing up with a family that valued food being ideally seasonal and ideally from, something we grew ourselves, I think it's, again, played a part in how we what menu we have.
And I'm sure your customers and your community kind of appreciate that as well as they hear and taste your food, because I'm sure it makes it that much more delicious being local. I wanted to talk more about the future for the business. What are kind of your ambitions or the next steps that you'd like to take?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and one that George and I are often sort of chatting about. This was never obviously in our plan, which I quite like in a way. I guess I'm quite a regimented person. I like to know exactly what I'm doing and when, and COVID just didn't allow for that. So I quite like the fact that we've bought something that we never would have. I can't imagine. I just don't see why we would have. And it is the perfect fit for our catering company, in that, as I mentioned earlier, it's the perfect add-on to events. So like I said, with weddings, you can have the formal wedding breakfast followed by the informal evening food truck kind of element. So I'd love to, certainly in the next year, push the idea of offering this whole package so that George and I can kind of, under one umbrella, offer, we can, for certainly DIY weddings, we can offer the kitchen, which will be the trailer. We can offer the wedding breakfast, which will come from the trailer, and the evening food, which will then have that kind of showstopper look. So I really want to push that. I want to push as much like local interest as possible. So working with local venues and being on their preferred supplier list. So we're keeping everything as local as possible. I think really long term, I'd love the idea that we could buy another airstream and have an offshoot, whether it's the equivalent or whether it's a drink bar kind of offering that we then add on as another option to our kind of catering package. So lots of ideas, not necessarily anything concrete. I think, we're 4 months in, so it's still a case of establishing ourselves, but it's keeping it local, adding on that element to George's Kitchen and showing, being that bigger package offering, but ideally scaling up, getting another one. That would be a dream.
And have there been any unique events or venues that you've supported?
Yeah, we've had. I didn't realise the power of social media. I guess I was, from a personal perspective, I was never I was more passive than active. So much so that my own personal account, I never post. I probably haven't in 3 or 4 years. But I was speaking to a company that are also a food trader business locally, and they just said you can't underestimate the power of it. So early doors, I set up a social media account for the Rocket Oven before we even bought the trailer, and started to build our story. And quite quickly, I realised that people love the idea of being behind something, and learning as you learn almost. So making it quite authentic. And the result of having that social media account has been pretty much most of our business has come from that. So much so that as you kind of asked, our biggest kind of event probably so far, or interesting one, is we worked for at Silverstone, so the classic car festival a few months back, which was amazing just to have such a recognisable name for our brand already. Was quite incredible to be asked from the events team at Silverstone Woodlands to come along to their campsite and be one of the 3 vendors. So that was amazing. It felt quite a big accolade to get that sort of month 2 or 3 into the business. And
absolutely, what great exposure and that early on in the business.
Exactly. And then we had a local one just 2 weeks ago at a local farm, which again playing into the fact that I really want to stay local. It's called PC Manor Farm, and they're just an amazing local farm that sell all their own produce, and they had a big outdoor cinema event, and we were one of 2 food vendors. And again, it felt pretty special to be able to do something so locally, so early on, and be part of kind of quite a big event. So those are 2 standouts.
Excellent. Wanted to go back to the boxes. Is there any future for the boxes, or have you phased that part of the business out?
I think the boxes are over. I think they served their purpose. They kept us afloat, from a financial perspective and probably a mental health perspective. I think we needed that purpose. A lot of people obviously needed purpose during COVID. It was a really isolating time. So it kept our brains going, but it also meant we could kind of survive, really. But no, I think they've served their purpose, and they, in a way, indirectly led to us, staying local, building a business locally, and having an existing client base who, the customers we built then, they come and eat at our trailer and are so behind us because I guess they saw our sort of story unfold, if you will. So yeah, no, I think the boxes are over, but it was good while it lasted. There are some good photos of George in our front room, which we recently moved here, so it was empty, luckily, and it just became the supply chain of trestle tables and weighing scales and just boxes piled high to the ceiling. It was hard, but it was quite, I look back on it fondly, which I'm not sure I could imagine at the time, but it felt
you learn and you grow from experiences like that, right?
Yeah, I think you realise that nothing's impossible. It was a random idea that took off for 4 or 5 months, and we made a living. That was the main thing. We wanted to survive. So yeah.
And in conclusion, I wanted to ask you about the rocket route. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think this rocket route is being delayed heavily. First of all, it was delayed because George needed to get his trailer test, and he passed that. And now it's being delayed, sadly, because we need a generator. We had ordered one quite a while ago, but with COVID and Brexit, as many industries are finding, things are held up. So it's, in theory, coming in October.
Okay.
Then we will have a route around Bucks, ideally sort of Thursday through to Saturday, maybe starting Wednesday. We certainly will always be open at our local pub on a night during that week, but we'd love to add in more local pubs, breweries, tap rooms, that sort of thing to our profile, and to build up that regular client base. I think one thing that we've really struggled with is balancing private events with having a residency somewhere. You need to build up that reputation locally if you want to have a residency and hope, that you have enough customers coming back each week. However, most private events, are on a Friday and Saturday. So we've had to sort of grapple with, when we are closed, how do we communicate that and make sure we're open enough that we're not going to annoy people. So not directly answering your question, but I think we've just got to keep thinking about what that rocket route will look like and making sure it's as frequent as as possible, that we're not constantly stopping and starting.
Yeah. So, and I think you'll build up, you'll have many customers who are going to be eagerly awaiting your arrival on the rocket route. So I think it sounds like a fantastic idea and something, again, kind of bringing your amazing food to the community across different venues and locations. Sounds like a great idea.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah.
So just looking at your business model today, with the rocket oven, is this a business that you anticipate will always remain on the road, or is it a format where you would someday like to take into more of a retail or a kind of consistent single location or multiple locations?
No, I don't think we would. We wouldn't want to become kind of a restaurant that was in one place. I think the beauty of what we've got certainly is, from a financial perspective, we haven't got the overheads like a restaurant would have, which, I don't know the statistics, but I'm pretty sure restaurants in their first year or two, it can be very tough because of the rent. Before we started the rocket oven, we were thinking about doing a deli in town. And to be honest, just looking at the overheads for that as an example, it was quite off-putting, especially in the current market, I guess, with COVID and everything. Certainly when we were looking, we weren't sure, with lockdowns and stuff. I know we're in a different world now, but I think it isn't something that appeals, having that sense of kind of having to take X a month. This trailer, you can literally park it as, and come back to it if you needed to, for example. Whereas a restaurant, obviously, you've got a lease where you've got 6 months worth of rent and so on. So I think the beauty of this business is that sense of it's not free to run the trailer, but it's, from a financial perspective, it's certainly a lot more sort of lean than having a restaurant. It's that's the appeal, and being able to go to events and festivals. It's George is certainly loving it. He loved his catering company, but this is a different dynamic, and he's really enjoying it. So. Yeah. And
I love your ambition to remain focused, and the model that you want to continue to pursue and build out. So that's great. And like I said, we're very excited to see you grow and prosper in this new venture. Well, thank you so much, Tori. This is a real pleasure, and I loved hearing more about your business and some of the challenges that you've had. And I want to wish you all the best and good luck with the rocket route. I hope to see you guys. I'll watch your Instagram stories to see where you're traveling.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yvonne. Lovely to chat.
That's it for this week's episode of Flip Dish Takeaways. If you'd like to find out more, please visit our website at flipdish.com. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you're listening. See you next time.